Hello, you're watching Pantau Belanjawan with me, Nina Rosman. And as Malaysia prepares to roll out the 30th plan or RMK-13, which is a critical spotlight falls on the nation's social protection system, particularly its ability to safeguard those often left behind, gig workers, daily wage earners and informal sector participants. And we can see, despite contributing to the economy, many of these individuals remain outside the formal, or we can say formal safety net, exposed to income shocks and more vulnerable to extreme challenges. And for this discussion, we're going to bring you our guests to help us understand how's the landscape of our social security system and how can we redefine the growth and the future of social security for all Malaysians. And for that, I welcome you. Our guest ready on the line is Professor Niaz Asadullah, Southeast Asia Cluster Lead, Global Labour Organization. I want to say thank you very much, Professor Niaz, for joining me. Definitely, this is the future of our worker, of our people, and then we're going to make sure all of our ecosystem or within the landscape of social protection is on par. Maybe you can share with us for the presentation at end of month of July, talking about RMK-13, talking about development in all of other aspects, and this time we're going to be shifting more focus on the social protection. Maybe you can share with us, how does RMK-13 plan to address the protection gap between the formal sector co-workers and those who's informal and also contractless or gig-based role, especially as employment structures evolve rapidly?
Thank you for inviting me. So let me add to your introductions. So Malaysia still does not do enough to provide broad-based social protection for workers. If we are thinking in terms of statistics, the spending is about 4 to 5% of GDP altogether. So that's roughly the same share as lower middle income countries. And as we speak, the 13 Malaysia plan is all about doing better, providing better coverage for informal workers, self-employed, and particularly those that are in the gig sector. So again, the other part of the context is that in the past, the 12 Malaysia plan hasn't done enough. We experimented with few ideas. We know about targeted pilots schemes such as ISARAN for EPF. But I think with 13 Malaysia plan, the idea is to look forward, build on that, because we know that there has been a problem with take-up rates of those pilot schemes. In one context, we know that only about 19% of Grab riders had active per queso coverage. So moving forward, therefore, the 13 Malaysia plan is eyeing on kind of taking the Madani framework forward, which is kind of making sure that there is access to social protection scheme for everyone in the country, so that then with new provisions, we have a resilient and dynamic social protection scheme where there is contribution-based coverage for every workers, regardless of their contract status. So you can also therefore think of it, there is now conversation, which we will discuss, of course, that provision for no-fault accident scheme that would extend protection beyond traditional work settings.
All right, I'm going to also touch on the non-occupational accident scheme of SKBBK that was approved in principle of 2024, but still awaits parliamentary approval. Help us understand this. Why is the delay and what are the risks do vulnerable workers face as a result of this delay?
So if you think about it that, well, the government is moving from a pilot phase, which was 12 Malaysia plan, to now have very concrete, well-defined provision. But of course, we are talking about money here, right? This costs government millions. And one issue, therefore, is also kind of to work out the details. For example, what should be the right contribution formula? How much should a worker contribute per year? And again, should it be a flat rate for everyone? we have different vulnerable groups in the Malaysian economy. So we have got gig platform workers who are lobbying for a different rate. So therefore, I think this is where the government is taking time kind of to find the sweet spot that, should the number be something like ringgit 84 per worker per year, going all the way up to 100 ringgit. So, and this is very important because if we look in a regional context, think of other ASEAN countries such as Thailand, where they also have something similar, Social Security Fund Article 40, where informal workers also make a voluntary contribution, but it's a flat contribution, right? So, and then in return, they receive cash benefits for non-work accidents. So this is, I think, where the government is thinking through, because once it makes a commitment, it wants to honor that. But at the same time, I think the government is cautious not to kind of rush into it so that it causes new controversy. And again, we are talking about a very vulnerable group of the society. So we need to get the number right when it comes to the right amount of contribution. And again, here there are two things. One is that coverage, and the other one is adequacy. So the government wants to use the fund to provide support to as many people, vulnerable people as possible on a need basis. But at the same time, they want to also raise funds that would be adequate to provide the coverage. And also, let's not forget about the legal side of it. That there are maybe other concerns from private insurance companies, and those are also important stakeholders which the government have to listen to.
All right, this is one of the challenges. But talking about this, as Malaysia expands social protection, how can the government ensure the contribution model under the SKBBK is inclusive and does not overburden the gig worker, we can say, or also the individual employees?
So yes, I mean, here we are essentially talking about two sides. So definitely there is the monetary side, that's the financial burden, but also there is the psychological burden, where we are talking about individuals who have suffered trauma, they're in very informal work setting, suffering from low level of literacy. But, so we can turn to that point later in that conversation. But so yes, so here again, the issue is that what is the right amount? And here one idea is the principle of progressivity, that will instead of one flat rate, so thinking of some sort of solidarity sharing. For example, we have informal workers who are the B40 self-employed, and at the same time we have got high turnover gig platform workers, and one idea would be for this later group to share a slight, a bigger part. And again, so here regional examples can be relevant if we are thinking and looking within Asia. Japan is one example where self-employed persons pay a low flat premium, and which is partially subsidized through cross-subsidy in the main employees' accident insurance fund. So this is an idea that Malaysian government can look further into.
All right, we want to talk about the social ecosystem protection from the previous until now, pre-pandemic COVID-19, during the pandemic and even post-pandemic. Definitely all the structure challenges is a bit different. Maybe you can share with us the history and the performance of our social security within the Malaysia. How has it changed until now, especially post-pandemic?
So during the pandemic time, so we have seen how the population was exposed to multidimensional vulnerability, that we have seen rapid job cuts. We have seen, disruptions to the life of self-employed workers who could not run corner shops, mamak shops. And of course, we have also seen the helplessness of non-Malaysians, thousands of foreign workers in the country who were also exposed to economic crisis. And we have seen the collective social vulnerability to that sort of crisis, that when they're in distress, we have seen outbreak of disease through migrant worker residential locations and all that. So what it means is that, well, there was this realization that business as usual approach to social protection wasn't good enough. We needed to realign our social security framework, not just with the global framework as laid out by ILO, where SDG 1.3 target also insists on social protection for everyone. At the same time, we have realized that we have also our own internal goals. As we talk, there is the 2030 goal the government has set. And of course, there is the Madani framework. On top of that, we have the New Industrial Master Plan 2030. All of that actually requires higher labor productivity. And for that, we need to ensure that workers thrive in a very protective environment so that collectively everyone is able to supply their labor in various capacities, as gig workers, as small traders, SMEs, and also those in the informal sector, widows, mothers working on online platforms, and so on and so forth. So therefore, the government has revamped and relooked at the various pillars of social protection, which also includes better access to jobs, active labor market policy, better training. And on top of that, as we are discussing today, the issue of protection in terms of insurance provision through SOXO, and at the same time, there is talk about affordable private insurance. So we are essentially expanding the choice that citizens have alongside non-citizens so that everyone feels safe, secure, well protected, and therefore in that context can provide supply labor to the Malaysian economy.
All right, that is also helping us understand the whole landscape of how our social protection has progressed until now, especially post-pandemic. Definitely, this is a very critical aspect that we have to take a look at to ensure what kind of the right restructuring or reformation that will need to integrate within the social protection ecosystem. But I also want to take a look on the criticisms on purchase burdensome claims process. But Professor Niaz, please stay tuned with us as we'll be taking a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Pantau Belanjawan, and we're going to continue discussing about social protection ecosystem, and we have our guest still staying with us on the line is Professor Niaz Asadullah, the Southeast Asia Cluster Lead Global Labour Organisation. I want to say thank you very much for staying tuned with us, Professor. And definitely on the first segment, you have shared a lot with us the progress of the social protections or the social structure within the Malaysian ecosystem. And now I'm going to take our discussion towards the criticism of purchase burdensome claims process, especially for accident victims dealing with trauma. Does RMK-13, are we expecting that RMK-13 will outline all of this, any clear reforms to streamline and even humanize the system?
Well, yes, that's the public expectation that as we speak, it's very burdensome, and particularly when we are talking about the stakeholder group in discussion, that informal workers, gig workers, women, widows. So they lack not just financial literacy, they also lack the usual traditional literacy, numeracy, and all that. And if we are to imagine the process that they have to go through, it is extremely challenging and demanding in terms of paperwork. So to begin with, someone, for a benefit claim to be made, they have to complete the PS2 form and then go to the nearest SOXO office. But that's just the beginning because, it also has to go with the necessary police and medical reports, and for which they have to appear in person. And oftentimes, the number of visits can be more than one, and there may be additional documents involved. And it means that the time that it takes to complete claim submission can stretch all the way up to 90 days, which is well beyond PRESCO's 21 target day. And of course, when we're talking about those that are submitting a claim, they have already gone through enough physical trauma, and they have also very irregular work schedules. All of that adds to their stress. Now, therefore, the expectation is for the government to streamline it and to kind of reduce this to a single submission process where there can be also provision for auto reimbursement, if you like, and that can be set to a lower figure. For example, for submissions below ringgit 500, there can be a provision for auto reimbursement, and this can be ensured if the government invests in digital technology, for example, to create provision for claims data interoperability. What does it mean? Well, it means that for a particular claimant, as long as the personal data is available within the government in any department, the insurance company as well as SOXO, Perkeso, they all will have access to the same record so that the claimant doesn't have to provide the same information twice to the government. And this can be done also, therefore, in combination with a robust data integration process by, through digital evidence platform, e-medical services, think of also e-police reports and so on. On top of that, there can be added service provided, such as trauma navigator service staffed by medical social workers. That's another proposal to consider, particularly for those claimants that are severely injured. So this is again the human side of the current setup that everyone expects, the kind of setup, the kind of modernization provision that were absent from 12th Malaysia Plan, and the kind of gaps that have been repeatedly highlighted by NGO workers working with vulnerable groups.
Mm-hmm. And then probably talking about this reforming the claim process, what some of the metrics that we can use or utilize to measure improvement in the claiming process and even the user satisfaction?
So can you please repeat that question again?
Maybe you can help share with us what some of the best metrics or approach that we can use or introduce within the RMK-13 to improve measurement, or we can say improvement in claims processing time and even user satisfaction.
So so one issue that keeps coming up is that of data. That so we know that there was an attempt to create a universal database for all citizens in Malaysia, so that we know who they are, their kind of vulnerability, their capacity to contribute, and all that. So that is one aspect where so this as a challenge. Every time the government wants to expand the social protection system, there is this data gap that makes it harder for the government, A, to figure out how much fund to raise to provide coverage, and B, to figure out what is the right amount of contribution and for which social group. So this is one aspect where the there is a lack of progress, and where we need to do, what the government needs to do more. Now, beyond that, of course, so we can also think of other subgroups within the vulnerable groups. So, for instance, we have micro enterprises, and then we have gig intermediaries. So, therefore, here we can segregate the system. So, for example, have contribution rebates for micro enterprises with a certain sales figure cutoff, and then of course also introduce some kind of provision for matching grant for employers during the first couple of years in operation. The other idea is to sort of think of integrating e-invoicing, for instance, and talking about gig intermediaries. There can be also provision for platform-based auto enrollment. So these are some measures that again can offer a menu choice for the prospective groups that we wish to bring under this social protection for all framework as we wish to envision under 13 Malaysia plan.
And also talking about stakeholders, one of the most important stakeholders in ensuring not only that every month is our salary is banked in within our bank, but also to ensure their safety and protection in delivering all of their jobs and commitment and responsibility. And maybe this part is for the employee part. What some of the incentive or suitable frameworks that RMK-13 will introduce to encourage greater employer participation in social security, particularly the micro enterprise and even the employer who's employing informal workers?
So for micro enterprise, so one idea that I've already talked about is that of rebate, right? That will, so micro enterprise with annual sales, for example, under 300,000 Malaysian ringgit can receive 50% matching grant on the employer share of per peso contributions during the first couple of years. But I think the other issue is, of course, that of low wages in general, that this has been an issue that will, so one idea is to kind of create more provisions for groups in low income bracket. But the other idea is also to sort of do more so that there is wage growth. They don't have to count on social protection, the active labor market policy is revamped. There is more investment so that, we provide better trainings for them so that they can also kind of upskill, move on to better jobs, well-protected jobs where employers also have better provisions. Because this has been the reality for vast majority of Malaysians, that they are stuck in the low skill segment of the labor market, where not just pay is low, but the protection from employers without nudging from the government is also low. Where therefore, ensuring better job mobility would be kind of a win-win story, where the employer has built-in incentive and jobs with better pay are also those that have better provisions for childcare at workplace, also better paternity leaves, and of course, better provision for work-life balance and so on. So I think this dual track strategy is very important, that while we are talking about per peso, considering new provisions where we have also support for non-work related accidents, at the same time, we need to kind of push equally hard in terms of creating better jobs, better paid jobs for a broad cross-section of Malaysians.
Probably my last question, Professor Niaz. We know that RMK-13 is a 5-year document. It's considered as the medium and long-term planning and development. In your view, what's the single most urgent reform Malaysia must prioritize to make our social protection system truly future ready? I'm sorry, Professor Niaz, you only have a balance of 2 minutes. Maybe can simplify.
So yeah, I would like to go back to the new digital master plan. That so we are at a time talking about industrialization 2.0. We are repositioning ourselves as a regional hub for futuristic investment. Semiconductors, we're also emphasizing on TVET to prepare Malaysian youths for precision farming, intensive agriculture and so on. So therefore, the focus is very clear that it's about skilling up. But at the same time, we want to ensure that, those that wish to skill up have equal access to opportunities. And that's where I think the challenge is that, we want to ensure equal opportunity by presenting as a very inclusive and resilient social protection system, so that those from underprivileged background can also be part of this Malaysian dream, that by 2030, we want to become a high-income Malaysia, specializing in production of complex activities. And as part of that dream, any citizen in Malaysia, regardless of their current position, be that they are gig workers, small enterprise, widow, single mother, they all have access to this ladder of social mobility, where any short-term shock, be that an accident at workplace or outside workplace, does not set back their life, does not hold them back. As a nation, we aspire to graduate to a new identity, which is high-income Malaysia, high-productive Malaysia for everyone.
All right. Again, I'm so sorry, Professor Niaz. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the session. Definitely, I want to say thank you very much from all you've just shared with us in the face of rapidly evolving labour market. With what you have shared with us and what we have discussed, are some of the aspect or approach that how Malaysia can future-proof the social security framework moving forward. Again, I want to say thank you very much to Professor Niaz Asadullah, Southeast Asia Cluster Lead, Global Labour Organisation. Definitely, all of our discussion here will be featured in astro.com and across all social media platform. And that's it, discussion in Pantau Belanjawan. I'm Nina Rosman. See you next time.